Okay.
Thanks, man.
Alright, number 1, set to solve by completing the square. I told you you could, but you didn't have to. I just did the quadratic formula. So I moved the negative 12 in and the negative 6 over. So I had an A of 5, a B of 12, and a C of 6. And that's what I went to the quadratic formula with. So we would have negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 144 minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. 4 times 5 is 20 times 6 is 120, so 144 minus 120, I got 24. So I was looking at negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 10. 24 is not a perfect square. Biggest perfect square that go evenly into 24 is 4. It's 4 times 6. So the square root of 4 is 2. So this would be negative 12 plus or minus 2. Square roots of 6 over 10. And then the last thing you can do is just reduce it all. Divide it all by 2. Gets you negative 6 plus or minus 1 square root of 6 over 5. And that'd be it. Looks like C on there. Okay. Number 2, anytime you're talking about how far, how long, or how fast, it's a D, distance equals rate times time. D equals RT. So that's how you'll start those tables. People are saying they don't know how to set the tables up. They're the same every time. Most of the ones we did in class then went like upstream and downstream. This one, it just goes across the lake and back. So I did an across and a back. So that's how my table, how I chose to label it. You could have labeled it some other way there. Some people didn't know what to do with the 3 hours. You need that. It says Sue rowed her boat back and across in 3 hours. You need that on the end. We're not ready for it yet. Her rate rowing back was 2 miles an hour less than her rate rowing across. So if she rowed X across coming back, she rowed 2 miles an hour less than that. So X minus 2. Tells you that the total distance she went each way was 7 miles, so there's your D column. We know distance equals rate times time, so if we're trying to solve for time, you would divide. So this would be 7 over X, and this would be 7 over X minus 2. Now we're ready for that 3 hours. Across time plus back time has to equal 3 hours, so you'd have 7 over X plus 7 over X minus 2 is equal to 3. Okay? Now, what I chose to do here was cancel out the fractions by multiplying by the product of the denominators. So I'm going to multiply that whole shebang by X times X minus 2. Okay, so here the X will cancel out, and you'll just have a 7 to distribute to X minus 2, which will get you 7X minus 14. Here, the X minus 2's will cancel out, so you just have a 7X. When you go to the 3, nothing cancels out. So you got to do 3 times X, and then times X minus 2, so that gets you 3X squared minus 6X. Okay, now I'm going to take that and make it in standard form in a quadratic. On the left side, I've got a 7X and a 7X, which is a 14X. So I'm going to subtract that 14X from both sides. So over here where it was negative 6X, negative 6 minus 14 makes that a negative 20X. Then I'm going to move that 14 over, so I'm going to have to add it to move it over. So there's the quadratic that you're looking to solve. So negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2 times A. Okay, so you got 400, let's see what all I got underneath that radical there. I ended up getting 15.2 underneath the radical after I square rooted. So I had to do 20 plus 15.2 divided by 6 and 20 minus 15.2 divided by 6. Okay, so here this got me 5.9 on this one. And this one got me 0.8. So I've got, remember we were solving for x, and x stands for the rate that whoever this is going back and forth across the lake. So does it make more sense if they're going 5.9 miles an hour or 0.8 miles an hour? Which one of those is a choice also has to make sense to you. So which one do we have a choice? 5.9, it is D, good. Okay, number 3 says use the discriminants to decide if it can be factored and then factor it. First thing you ought to do is mark out B and C. B and C both have subtraction signs on number 3, but all of the signs are positives. Put it on pause back to this chart.
How do you get positive 3x squared or positive 3x?
I moved the stuff on the left over that way. Yeah, I could have moved, you're right, I could have moved that way, but I moved it the other way. Alright, so back on number 3 again, I was saying mark out B and C because they've got minus signs. The equation on 3 is all plus signs, so there's not any room for any minus signs. So then what we do is check, come on, changed up there and it didn't on mine, it's still showing full of DRT junk. Reorient. Alright, so what I was trying to say is I'm checking now between A and D, whether or not it can be factored. A factors it as a perfect square trinomial. It takes the square root of 49k squared. It takes the first sign. It takes the square root of 25. Makes that a perfect square trinomial. That is possible if it meets those criteria I just told you. Perfect square, perfect square. Then we have to multiply these, and it's got to be half of the B. So is 7k times 5 half of 70k?
Yes.
Yes, because it's 35, which is half of 70. So this is the correct factoring of that, which was A. All right, on 4, I marked out A and C. Okay, reason on number 4 I marked out A and C is because the directions said find the non-real solutions. A and C did not have I's in them, so they're not non-real. Okay, so there's your 50-50 shot already. From there, we're looking at the quadratic formula again. I did the quadratic formula all the time on this test. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Alright, so that 4 times 5 is 20 times 6 is 120, so 25 minus 120 I got was negative 95. Now I think I didn't go any, well it doesn't matter, 95 obviously doesn't break down. I didn't worry about trying to see if 95 would break down. Looking at your choices, it obviously doesn't. I went off of the negative sign out here in front. That told me it had to be D on that. Alright, I chose on number 5 to get rid of the fractions. You did not have to. You could do an A of 1, a B of negative 1/5, and a C of 7/10. You could. I didn't want to do that, so I multiplied the whole equation by 10. We go ahead and move that 7/10 over, so it'll be plus 7/10. So if I multiply this whole thing by 10, because 5 and 10 will both go evenly into 10, I can get some whole numbers for my A, B, and C. So that's what I chose to do. So that gave me here a 10x squared. And then 10 over 5 there would make that a minus 2x. And then here it would be 7. 10 times 0 is 0. Okay, so now you go with your quadratic formula again. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Alright, so I got 4 times 10 is 40 times 7 is 280. So 4 minus 280 is negative 276. Okay, I knew it was B from here. Now I'll go on and break it down with you and solve it, but the reason you know it's B from here is because no matter what you end up reducing this to, this is positive, right? So when I reduce it, it's still going to be a positive there. Okay, so I knew that B was the only one that had that positive. I knew it couldn't be C or D. They're screwy. If you've got an I, you got to have a positive and a negative I. They didn't include that on C or D. Okay? But if you need to break this down, if you want to keep practicing and go farther, this would be 4 times 69 gets you 276. So square root of 4 is 2. Square root of a negative is I. And then you would divide everything by 2. So that would be 1 plus or minus I square root of 69 over 10. Which is what B said. Alright, number 6 we did almost identical problem to that in class. So ready for 6 there? Still some of you catching this one up. Alright, we got a rectangular fish pond here. Not uniform, but we're going to pretend it is. Okay, what they tell us on this problem is that her fish pond is 15 by 18. So this inner rectangle is a 15 by 18 fish pond. Then we're going to put a grass strip of uniform width around the pond. Obviously my picture is not uniform width because that means the same. So we're pretending I got the same. So what was 15 here, I'm adding an unknown and an unknown. So now this is 15 plus 2 unknowns. Okay, what was 18 here, I added an unknown and an unknown. So this is 18 plus 2 unknowns. Okay, so my huge rectangle would be length times width. So we would set this up as 18 plus 2x times 15 plus 2x. When we did this problem in class, Zane was the one with enough sense to know we needed to subtract the pool out. So we're going to do 15 times 18 for the area of the pool. That is 270. Thank you, sir. And subtract that out. Good, Dustin. Has to equal the grass seed that she says she has, which is 234. Okay, we got that 234 from the problem. Alright, so my first chore here will be to multiply those two binomials. 36x and 30x is 66x, 4x squared.
Sorry.
Yes.
You have Mason Lambert.
Yes.
Can I see him at your convenience?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now after I foiled that, wait till we get done. After I foiled that, 270 and negative 270, he gone. So to get this in standard form, I need to subtract the 234 over. 4x squared plus 66x minus 234 is equal to 0. I had some people first period use those values for their A, B, and C, and that's great. I divided it all by 2 and got a little bit smaller numbers. It still didn't work out fabulous, but they were a little bit smaller. I had 2x squared, 33x minus 117. I mean, 117 is not much easier to do in your head anyway, so it might have been a case where I should have left them bigger numbers. I don't know. So either way, use your quadratic formula either with the 466 and negative 234 or the 233 and negative 117. I had on screen negative 33 plus or minus the square root of 33 squared was 1089 minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times a. That got me underneath the radical. It ended up being a whole number. It was 45. So I was looking at negative 33 plus or minus 45 divided by 4. I didn't mess with negative 33 minus 45 because that'd be a negative number, and I'm trying to find how much grass she's planting, and she's not going to plant a negative amount of grass. So I just had to do negative 33 plus 45, which is 12, divided by 4. Her grass strip was 3 feet. Page 2 when you get caught up. Seven and 10 are my least favorite problems on the test. They're easy, I just don't like them. I don't like them. Well, I missed something that big, but I didn't. Alright. 7, Dustin got it figured out. It tells you on 7 to put a u in there instead of the p plus 6. So I'm not even going to write the original equation. I'm going to take out the p plus 6 and put the u. So it would be 5u squared plus 6u plus 1 equals 0. Now we're going to do the same thing on 10, or very similar anyway, on 10 in just a second. This we're going to go ahead and solve using the quadratic formula. But when we get done, that's what u equals. So then we got to make a conversion kind of to figure out what p is. But for u here, you'd have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. It's pretty good underneath the radical there because that's 36 minus 20, which is 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So you got negative 6 plus 4 divided by 10 and negative 6 minus 4 divided by 10. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Divided by 10 is negative 1/5. Negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. Divided by 10 is negative 1. Remember, that's what u equals. Our equation has got a p in it. What did we replace with the u? P plus 6, right? So it says up there in the directions u, which my first one is negative 1/5, equals p plus 6. And I got to solve that for p. Then I'll have to do it again with my other u. Negative 1 equals p plus 6. So to solve both of those for p, all you're doing is subtracting 6. This one, you can do this one the easiest and already know the answer, because that has to be negative 7. Negative 1 minus 6. There's only one choice that has negative 7. Finish it out. Negative 1/5 minus 30/5 is negative 31/5. Is that right? Thank you, Dustin. So there are your 2 P's. 2 P's in a pod. Number 10 we're going to attack in a similar manner, but it wasn't difficult to do. They just add those couple extra steps on there, makes it not my favorite problem. Alright, 8's a pretty fun one though. We ready? Fast and furious. Alright, we got a 33-inch square TV. So I'm going to give me a little square here. Tells me on number 8 that the 33 inches is the measure of the diagonal of the screen. Okay, so that's 33 inches. Now what's special about a square is that the sides are the same. So if this one's x, this one's also x. In case you don't know, it tells you to use the Pythagorean Theorem to figure out the sides of a screen. So a squared is x squared. B squared is also x squared. 33 squared is 1089. Combine these like terms, x squared and x squared is 2x squared. Divide by 2 when I did that. Look at the choices, because I originally blew this. I put a decimal but then I looked at the choices and they were fractions, so I had to go back and do some conversions. So when I divide this by 2, I'm just going to leave it as 1089 divided by 2. Okay, and I thought to do that after I originally screwed up based just on looking at the choices. Okay, now I'm doing a squared, so I'm square rooting. 1089 is a perfect square. It's 33, but 2 is not. Now your dilemma on this is you can't leave a radical on bottom. So we got to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2 to get rid of that. So on the top, 33 times the square root of 2 is just 33 times the square root of 2. And I wrote a 3 like a goober. On the bottom, square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4, also known as 2. Alright, we wrote a few notes about number 9. If our discriminant was equal to 0, that told us there was one exactly solution. So which one of those choices would that be? E. DD, you got it. Alright, on 10, what I noticed about 10, I got a 2/3 and a 1/3. Well, normally in the quadratic formula, we have a squared and we have a first. So I want that 1/3 to become a first, and I want that 2/3 to become a squared. So I had to do some thinking about power to a power stuff and figure out here that if I, where'd I go? There we go, number 10. If I had 1/3 times 2, that would get me the 2/3. Okay, so what I'm going to let happen here, I'm going to take that t plus 2, and I'm going to say t plus 2 to the 1/3, that's what's in front of this after the 6, is equal to x. Hey, we don't want you. Oh, I just did something wrong, I'm sure. Go away. Here. How do you make this score? There we go. I don't know what's going to happen. I want to make that equal x. So I'm going to write here, instead of x to the 2/3, and excuse me, instead of t plus 2 to the 2/3, that's going to be my x squared. Minus 6, and I'm taking out t plus 2 to the 1/3 and putting an x in. And then plus 8 is equal to 0. So I'm doing the same thing that I did last time. Whatever number I get when I solve this, I'll have to plug it back into this equation to solve for t. Alright, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's easy underneath the radical because that's just 36 minus 32. 4 times 8 is 32, which is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So you've got 6 plus 2 divided by 2 and 6 minus 2 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2, we get an x of 4. 4 divided by 2, we get an x of 2. Okay? I was about to say they'll probably put that as a choice, but they didn't, thank goodness, because a lot of people will get that and choose that. I have to take those now and convert them to my t's. So my first x, 4, equals t plus 2 to the 1/3 power. How do you undo a 1/3 power? What did you say? Well, that technically I think is the same thing. It's close.
Third root. Cube root?
Just cube it. The reciprocal will cancel itself out. 1/3 is like a cube root, right? So we're going to just cube the whole thing, which is where y'all were getting to. Jason's ain't good on that. 4 cubed, 4 times 4 is 64. That cancels that out. It's just t plus 2. So all you got to do is subtract your 2. You got a t of 62. Okay, now do the same thing with the 2. If you had a 2 cubed, this would be 8. What's 8 minus 2? That's it. 11's a lot more simple than it could have been. If they hadn't put that 0 on the right side, you could have a lot of work to do on 11. But because they put the 0 over there, it's not too bad. First thing you need to notice is that x cannot be 4. Because if on number 11, if you were to put a 4 on the denominator, 4 minus 4 would be 0, and that's undefined. So it cannot be 4. So anywhere where you see the answer 4, it can't touch it, so it can't have a bracket. It has to have a parentheses, which unfortunately, all of the 4s are written that way. So you don't get to eliminate any choices based on that. The other answers, though, look at the sign that they give you in the original problem on 11. It's a less than or equal to. So the other answers other than 4 are going to have brackets. Okay, so A, they got one with a bracket. B's got a bracket. C, mark C out. They've all got parentheses on it. D's got brackets. So we can only mark C out from there. I would argue you can mark A out, and I'll show you why in just a second, because it only has 4 that we already know about and one other answer. If you take that numerator, x minus 3 times x plus 7, you could FOIL it and do the quadratic formula. But I was telling you it's easier than that because it's already a 0 over there. All you got to do is set them each equal to 0 and solve. So you're going to have a 3 and you're going to have a negative 7. Okay, so now you can mark A out because A didn't include the negative 7. So we're looking at only B and D. Major difference to me on B and D is what's shaded. That's what you should see. Look at 0 on B and D. 0 is shaded on B. They're saying if I plug 0 in, it would work. D, 0 is not shaded. If I plug 0 in, it doesn't work. So that's what I'm going to do is take 0 to the original problem, plug it in, and see if it's true or not. If it's true, B's right. If it's false, D's right. Okay, so 0 minus 3 on the original equation. 0 plus 7. 0 minus 4. What's a negative divided by a negative? What's a negative divided by a negative? Positive. So this is, no matter what, this is going to be a positive answer. Is a positive answer less than or equal to 0? No. So 0 should not be shaded, which means your correct choice would be D. Okay, on number 12. You can mark choice D out using the same logic that we just used. Look at the denominator on number 12. It says x minus 3, so you know x cannot be 3. Because if it was 3, that would make the denominator 0, which is undefined. So x cannot be 3. D has got a bracket on 3, which means it touches it. So you can throw that one out. Okay? From there, it's not equal to 0 this time like the last one, so we got a little bit more work to do. I multiplied the whole thing by that denominator, canceled out. Here, distribute the 2. Now it's not too bad, that's linear. Add 6. 4 is greater than or equal to 2x, divide by 2. 2 is greater than or equal to x. So we have the 3 we've already talked about that's got to have a parentheses. And now my other answer is 2. It's got a line underneath it, so it's got to have a bracket. What choice has got a 3 with a parentheses and a 2 with a bracket? BB, you got it. Doing good. 13. Move the stuff over. 2n squared plus 6n plus 2. Quadratic formula. Oh, I divided it all by 2. Didn't have to. Those are pretty small numbers. But this would be the same as that, which got me even smaller numbers. So it doesn't matter. Quadratic formula here, your A's 2, your B's 6, your C's 2, or here, 1, 3, 1. It's up to you. You'll get the same answer. It doesn't matter. And either one of those is small enough to do in your head, so it wouldn't matter. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 AC all over 2A. That's just 9 minus 4, which is 5, so negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. My bad, Michael. How would that have looked different if I would have used the 2, the 6, and the 2? Any thoughts on that?
It wouldn't be any different, would it?
Not in the end, but I would have another step to do right now. What other step would I? Right. This is already reduced. If I would have used the 2, 6, and 2, like Zane said, it wouldn't be, and I would have to reduce. So it's you want to reduce first or last. That's all it boils down to on that. All right, we're on page 3. Number 14 says find non-real, so I marked A out. A's only got real choices. Quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. When I did that, and a lot of this quadratic formula stuff is just you multiplying whatever 4 times a times c is. Okay, if y'all are not knowing where I'm getting something from, you got to figure out what 4 times 1 times 52 is. Okay, I'm assuming y'all can compute that calculator or in your head, either one. This one I did on the calculator. Wouldn't be hard though, because you know what 4 times 50 would be, and just add 8 on there, right? Y'all can think like that? Yeah, Michael can. Anyway, I ended up underneath the radical getting negative 144. 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 144 divided by 2. 144 is perfect square. It's 12. Since you got a negative, it's 12i. So you got 8 plus or minus 12i divided by 2, which would be 4 plus or minus 6i. Doesn't matter. And of course, they had that as a choice because they're evil. Is one of them where you could work part of the problem and get an answer, and they put it as a choice. So you got to make sure you read the entire problem and answer all of it. Okay, it says Mary lives on a corner lot. The kids have been cutting diagonally across her yard instead of walking around. The diagonal across her yard is 30 feet. So they're cutting across there and walking 30 feet. Instead of staying on the sidewalk. Okay, that's what's happening on this. It says the longer part of the sidewalk is twice the shorter part. So that'd be 2x and that'd be x. Alright, now the question takes you farther than just how long is the shorter side. It wants to know how many feet are they saving by cutting across here. So you got to figure out how far they would have to walk if they walked there, and then subtract the 30 feet out of it. Here's a major mistake a lot of people are going to make. They're going to get x squared, Pythagorean Theorem, right? Okay? They're going to get x squared, but then they're going to write plus 2x squared. That's wrong. When you square 2x, you got to square the 2 and the x. Okay? A lot of people miss that. They'll get it wrong because of that. And then equals 30 squared, 900. X squared and 4x squared get you 5 of them, so you got 5x squareds. Okay, dividing that by 5 now. We got x squared is 180. Undo the square by square rooting. Don't have to worry about plus or minus because your distance on our yard kind of deal. And I rounded it to 13.4. Okay. So what that means on whoever Mary, I think it said Mary's yard here, is this part of the sidewalk is 13.4 feet. This part's double that. That'd be 26.8 feet. So if they didn't cut across their yard, they would have to go 13.4 plus 26.8, which was 40.2. So if they didn't cut across the yard, they got to walk that far. Cutting across the yard, they got to walk that far. How much shorter is it to cut across the yard? 10.2 according to mine. But what does it
10.
tell me on there? Round to the nearest foot, so 10 feet. Very good. Well, maybe on pace ahead of us first period. Alright, 16. We ready? It says Zane is delighted to drop various objects from a hotel balcony to the ground below. If he's 97 feet above the ground, how long does it take for the object to hit? It gives you the equation up there, D equals 16t squared. Zane's distance is 97. It told you that in the problem. So you're just algebraically solving for t on this. Divide by 16. I got 6.0625. Undo the squared by square rooting. And I got 2.46. Then I looked at the choices and they went to tenths. So to the nearest tenth, that'd be 2.5 seconds, which is C. Not that Zane would drop anything from the balcony of a hotel, right?
No.
Alright, 17. A square has an area of 49. Okay, we know special stuff we've already talked about on the square. If the area of this square is 49, each of these sides has to be 7. Right? Tracy, are you trying to kill me? Alright, then it says if the same amount is added to the length and removed from the width, so if we want to add something to this one and subtract the same from that one, and the area is 45, what happens? So, 7 plus x times 7 minus x is equal to 45. 49 minus 7x and plus 7x is gone. Minus x squared is equal to 45. Okay, if you subtract the 49, you got negative x squared is negative 4, which means x squared is 4. Square root of 4 means x is 2. Okay, so that means if I go back here, this one was 7 plus 2. I now got a side of 9. This one's 7 minus 2. I got a side of 5. So it'd be a 5 by 9, which would be C. I like those kinds of problems. Alright, 18, it tells you to use the square root property, and I'm going to because it's faster, but you don't have to. You could write that 8t minus 9 twice and FOIL it, get in standard form and do the quadratic formula. You could. It's faster to actually follow the directions on this one. Undo the squared by square rooting everything. So this would be 8t minus 9, square root of 10. It's just the square root of 10. Okay, now I'm trying to get the t all by itself. It's got a 9 being subtracted, so I'm going to add that. So 8t would be 9 plus or minus the square root of 10. Last step, your t is being multiplied by 8, so you're just going to divide by 8. So t would be 9 plus or minus the square root of 10 divided by 8, which is 8. Alright, 19. If you wanted to do quadratic formula, look at number 19 on your paper. If you wanted to do quadratic formula, you could. What would your b be? Look at number 19 on your paper and tell me what your b would be if you chose quadratic formula.
0.
0. Very good. So that is possible. I'm not going to do it that way. I said anytime it's missing a b, I just solve it algebraically. So I move the 24 over. Negative 6k squared equals negative 24. Divide by negative 6. K squared equals 4. Undo your squared by square rooting. Okay. On to the last one. Ready? We got solve for m. Okay, it's Pythagorean Theorem there. You'd have m squared plus n squared equals p squared. So if I'm trying to solve for m, first thing I'd do would be to subtract n squared. M squared equals p squared minus n squared. Now you just need to undo the squared, which means you need to square root everything. So m would be, and this is where, I was looking to see if they put this as a choice, and they didn't, but this will be where some people mess up. They'll think when they square root this that cancels those squares out. You can't do that. It just all stays underneath there, p squared minus n squared. And that's it. That'd be D, as in dynamite.
What'd you say the answer to 13 was?
13 was 80.
Okay, that's what it was.
Any other ones? I know we went lightning speed, but I wanted to give you a note on all of them. Number uno was C. This 24 is 4 times 6, so you can rewrite the square root of 4 is 2. So you can rewrite it as 2 square roots of 6. Stop breaking.
Can I go?
Yeah.
I'm taking your bag, guys.
Just a minute. And then you can divide everything, all the outsides by 2. You need to be circling about that. Sorry. First, I'm trying to help it and I'm kicking her. Where I did, Grace.
Oh, was my charger down there?
Yeah, I only tripped over it 8 times.
I was wondering.
I said, Grace, you're trying to kill me, and you were like,